Hey, John Gilroy here. When I was in high school, I had to memorize some poem about water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. Today, we're going to talk about tools. Maybe it's tools, tools everywhere, and not a one to use. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator today. We have two guests today in the virtual studio. We have Matt McCormick. He is the Senior Vice President for Business and Corporate Development. And we have a gentleman named Ross Hammer, Principal Threat Intelligence Engineer. And they're both from a company called ThreatQuotient. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Doing great. Doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Ross, did you have to memorize that poem in high school? Water, water everywhere. Am I the only one who had to memorize that?
Unfortunately, I did not.
Oh, my goodness. Well, drop everything and just get out your little high school literature book and start memorizing or something. But I was at an event and, I go to events, I see these booths. I saw ThreatQuotient. I said, ThreatQuotient, is that a math problem or what's? And then I saw this rhino and I said, oh, that's unusual, ThreatQuotient. And I got a little general idea of what you folks did. So I contacted the company and said, hey, maybe there's listeners or people who maybe walk by the same booth and are kind of confused and don't know what you do. I thought I would bring you on, and my existing audience can find out what you can do to help them achieve, whatever goals they have. Most of my listeners, most of my customers work for the federal government or are employed by companies that are intensely involved in zero trust, intensely involved in reducing threat and threat analysis. And a lot of people do threat analysis, and some people have magic sauce. So, Matt, what's the magic sauce? Is it the rhino sauce, or what do you guys got?
I think it must be the rhino. So, so ThreatQ, actually, it's been a pretty interesting story. I'll give you a quick rhino story before we start. So our two founders came out of General Dynamics, and they were running, one gentleman was running the SOCs for General Dynamics, doing a lot of DHS work, and the other gentleman was his chief architect. And the problem they were trying to solve is too much threat intelligence. Everyone's talking about it. Not usable, became noise within the SOC, and their operations, it caused problems. So that was the original problem. But to get to the rhino, which is more important, they started looking for mascots of what could this company be when they spun it off. And they originally, I think they had, I forget the animal, but when they looked at it, it looked like a squirrel when it came up, and they're like, we can't be a squirrel. There's already a company doing that. And someone suggested the rhino. So they did that, and the companies kind of rallied around it. Like we call each other the Crash, which is herd of rhinos.
Group of rhinos. Yeah.
We give the rhino charities. When people stop by at our booth, everybody that stops by gets, we send to a rhino charity some money and things like that. So it's been fun.
Fun. So, Ross, your background includes a lot of different, I think you worked for GDIT for a while. Is that true?
Yeah. So working with GDIT, specifically GDIT, deploying Marine Corps Combat Operations Center. So I trained Marines for a while, traveling all over the world. And then we ran across, employed by them again, or General Dynamics, working at the State Department. So I worked as a infrastructure engineer at the Diplomatic Security SOC, deploying all their security tools, redeploying equipment, maintaining their stuff for all the analysts and whatnot there.
So I'm taking notes. So I'm writing down Ross trained rhinos, Marines, rhinos, same kind of thing, point them in one direction and, hey, get out of the way.
And Ross was a Marine over in Afghanistan back in the day, yeah?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw it in his background. So he's got this really boots on the ground experience and then more intellectual experience too. So that's really that's a good thing to tap today. So Ross, when you're at a trade show or you're meeting people and people say, okay, Ross, you kind of look like a rhino there, but what does your company do and how can you help me? I mean, all these tools we have for threat detection, do you help coordinate them? What exactly does your company do, Ross?
So ThreatQ very much acts as kind of a central repository for threat information, ingesting it from all these different types of sources, deduplicating the information and kind of normalizing it, making it a lot easier for analysts to find the information. It also helps break down the different silos between different teams. So instead of having, each individual teams having their own information, making it difficult to share, sometimes they're, right next to each other, sometimes they're geographically separated. It very much helps them have that central repository. And since it's centrally located, we also have a lot of integrations with their tools. So sending information bidirectional. Makes it a lot easier, makes it a lot faster. It's standard formats. We can integrate or we can send data in almost any format that a tool or an analyst needs. So that's kind of our bread and butter, is acting as that central repository, making it easier for analysts to find information they need.
So, Matt, I was at your website earlier, THREATQ.com, and I saw all these integrations and everything else. So I did my research. And there's these folks at Forrester. They use all these reports, and everything else. So Forrester says, and everyone has to, Ross is picking up a pen and writing this down. Forrester says that 48% of organizations have more than 100 tools in their tool chain just for software development. I mean, are they duplicative? I mean, are they the same thing? Are they older versions, newer? Do they conflict with each other? And so what you're suggesting is that you have the unique ability to look at the tools for cybersecurity and get them to fly in formation. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll use an example from the physical world. When something bad happens in this world, you always find out, local police knew this, county police knew this, FBI knew this, the parents knew this, but the threat intelligence wasn't shared between the different organizations. And what we allow our customers to do is take cyber threat intelligence and move it around between the different tools. And we didn't write the tools. We don't want to be the next screen that people look at, but we want to know if an EDR product detected something, that detection can go up to the other products defending, say it's a firewall or an intrusion prevention system or whatever, protecting that organization. And that's what we do. We allow the prioritization of these things based on where they came from, what type of attack it is, what adversary it is, and move it around within an organization between the tools they've already bought, which is, everyone was talking about XDR like 4 years ago, is the AI of 4 years ago. And XDR is still very siloed. In XDR is extended detection and response. We extend it. So if a sandbox picks up something, we can get it to the rest of the tools and help protect based on that knowledge that you used one of your tools for.
Yeah. I've done bunches of interviews, Ross, and there's a company with a strange Welsh name called Cymru, CMRYU or something. And saw a case study. You work with them. I thought you were competitors, but it seems like you work with a lot of my previous guests here, can't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we definitely pride ourselves in. We are willing to work with anybody, even our competitors, to share data. So some are direct competitors. Others work in the intel space where we don't produce our own intelligence. We'll accept threat intelligence from a number of providers, in the example that you gave as well. So we work with those teams to make sure that their customers can ingest their information and then work with the existing tools that they already have.
So, Matt, traffic cop, kind of maybe a coordinator or something. I mean, what's the elevator pitch for you guys do?
Yeah, so if you think about cyber threat intelligence, and you named a company that does cyber threat intelligence, there's a lot of them out there. So I came back, from the engineering side myself, and then kind of grew up through a company called SourceFire, which did intrusion detection. And when you're doing intrusion detection, you see an attack, you stop the attack, you wait for the next attack. This whole industry of cyber threat intelligence started probably over the last 20 years, where people are saying, know your adversary, who's attacking you. We have a case study on our website that, that one of our customers had 11 adversaries attacking them every single day. Why not elevate those over the other, the rest of the threat intelligence coming in could be noise. So you want to prioritize what's important to you as a government agency. That, most of the people doing your cyber threat intelligence know the adversary is trying to attack them. You can relate that to tools. There's a lot of good sources of cyber threat intelligence, commercial and open source. There's things like MITRE ATT&CK framework. There's CISA sends out information that you can take it in, but unless you prioritize it, it's noise. Unless you make it actionable to you, it's noise, and it causes confusion when you're trying to stop an attack real time.
Yeah, it makes sense. There are people who are listening that may have heard of you and may want to go for a test drive. So, Matt, before the show, we talked about, so you have some kind of a test drive, or you talked about maybe a sandbox or something. So, what do you have
Yeah,
for the listeners who maybe want to try this out?
yeah. So I'll give a little background of that as well. So um, we know a lot of good people doing cyber threat intelligence globally. They don't know each other. So what we did as a company is we stood up what we call the ThreatQ community, and that allows people that are vetted um, to be able to go in and use the product at no cost. So it's not an open source product where we're shipping them product, but they come in and they can look at reports, they can build their own dashboards. They're not a user, they're not an administrator of the product, so they can't set up automations. They can't do the things that Ross and his teammates do, but they can use the product as any user would. So if they're, I mentioned adversaries, if they're concerned about an adversary attacking their agency, they can set up their own dashboard and see what about 80 sources of open source intelligence do. We have contributors. There's about 250 customers, big customers usually, and government organizations in the product today, with about over 400 users. So there's a way to sign up on our website, and yeah, we don't just let everyone in. You kind of have to be doing cyber threat intelligence, because then there's a value to you. If you're not
Yeah.
really doing it, there's really no value to you.
Yeah. And what I'll do, Matt, is I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So you're listening to this, you're walking your dog, you can go to the show notes page and download it and try it out. I'm an old man, you're a young man. There was a company in town that was pretty popular for, it's called Silo Smashers. I don't know if you remember that company. They may be still around. And so when I read about threat quotient, yeah, silos, teams in silos. And so you have seen that, and there's good news and bad news to silos, huh, Ross? So how do you manage a silo effectively? I mean, some silos are intentionally designed that way. I imagine in the intelligence community, there's a lot of silos, and so you can't break all the silos, can you?
No, no, you can't. And our platform is kind of originally designed to be that central repository for everybody. We do have methods to kind of keep those silos in place with our data sharing. We have a threat queue to threat queue type of data sharing. We can share it to other types of platforms. We also have the ability to do air gap data transfers. It's a very simple process that doesn't have a callback feature at all. And then we are also currently developing additional kind of segmentation systems within our platform as well to do that very siloed off. This person has a need to know information from this specific source or this, say, TLP level. So we're building that into our platform currently, in addition to everything that I just covered for more of your physical silos as well.
I teach downtown, and I always teach my students, in order to be terrific, you got to be specific. And when you said air gapped, there may be, let's say, 10,000 people listen to this. There may be just 12 people that are really interested in air gap, but they're really, really, really interested in it. And you guys have a white paper on it on your website. So like, oh, maybe we can hit this. If we can help 3 people today and download that and understand how to do that. So I just had to jump in there, Matt, with that. The air gap thing is most people don't care. 99, who cares? We don't do air gaps. But the people who do, believe me, they just jump out of their skin, don't they, Matt?
Yeah, and that's what I was just going to add on. Like Ross hit a couple
Yeah, he
big
did.
air gap and sharing. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you about an active DoD use case today where both of the agencies are in air gap systems. So that means the high side, the top secret side, is not connected to the internet, but they still get the benefit of being connected to the internet through this air gap capability.
Yeah.
So if something happens in one agency, and I used the example before, if a sandbox picks up a 0-day attack in one agency, it goes up to the threat queue system. The threat queue system can send it to the high side too, top secret. You guys start looking for this attack. And it also sends it to the other agency through this threat queue to threat queue sharing. We call it mama rhino to baby rhino sometimes, things like that. But it's very effective because then that second, within minutes, and this is an automated process, within minutes, that second agency can take that data and send it out to the other tools they're using, whatever it is, a endpoint, a firewall, and say block this because this is a 0-day attack. that's attacking my neighbor right now, but they gave me that information.
Interesting. So Ross, from your perspective, you've seen a lot of things, boots on the ground as far as, sensitive information, everything else. People talk about alert fatigue. They talk about the security tools not integrated. And so, what advice would you give someone who's maybe frustrated with alert fatigue? I mean, how can they quickly is it set a priority? Maybe it's what Matt used. Maybe is it prioritization?
Yeah, it's very much prioritization. Our tool, or our tool, is designed to allow the organization to prioritize what they're interested in. The type of indicators, where it's coming from, they can put a confidence weight on the sources of information, whether it's open source, commercial, internal. And then we also have it on key text, that context that comes a lot with this threat intelligence, whether it's keywords. Is this malware related? Is this a specific malware family? Is it related to something? Are these coming in from internal reports? We have the ability to filter that, prioritize that, and then that gets to the specific tools, or they can build up dashboards of like, oh, this is the information I'm specifically looking for. Instead of sorting through millions and millions of pieces of information, it helps narrow that down for them through exactly what they're looking for. We have ability to do what we call a smart collection. So they can filter out the data that they're specifically looking for, and it's dynamically updated. So as new information comes in, it can be filtered, pushed up to the top for them to take a look at. So we have that ability as well to help reduce that fatigue, try to reduce those false positives and that kind of information.
Oh, Matt, I have a mandate in front of me from the White House issued this morning and delivered by courier that I have to say artificial intelligence every 22.3 minutes. All right. I get bounced off the air here or something. So we got to ask it. Okay. And this is my favorite quote. I just love this quote. It's a woman named Lee Palmer. I interviewed her and she said, AI is always confident, but not always correct. And so you get someone who says, yes, unequivocally, my name is John Gilroy and Columbus is the capital of New York. Well, just because you say it with confidence doesn't mean it's true. So, Matt, does AI apply to this discussion, or is it you just run away from that stuff?
It does. It absolutely does. We don't. It's funny because we're not advertising AI. You didn't really see a lot on our
I
website.
know.
You'll
That's
see it
why I
in our
asked.
integrations though, because the way we've approached AI. First of all, there's a number of different parts of AI. So there's machine learning, natural language, NLP, and then there's generative AI. ThreatQ has for years done machine learning and NLP, so we can use NLP to parse reports that are coming in and give value that way. On the generative AI side, we decide, back a couple of years, there's always a build or buy or a partner. And what we've done is we've partnered with the best. So if you're in a top secret environment, you do not want to send what you're seeing up to ChatGPT because then the world knows about it, right?
Then you're in
So
jail.
then you're in jail and you can't. So you use the tools that they provided, and everything in our product is available via API. So we'll use the tools that they're using. We've partnered with Google in this. We've partnered with ChatGPT in this. I was on yesterday with a company called Ask Sage, which is really that's what they focus on is the DoD, the IL5 and up areas. So we'll use whatever tools they're using, and then you can use AI to reduce time to get to the alerts. You can use it for reporting, lots of different functions of AI. And yes, we work with it, but we're not building it ourselves. We're partnering with who's better in that environment for us to use, especially when you start talking about agencies.
So Ross, Matt had a good distinction there, Ross. He talked about generative AI, natural language processing, there's computer vision, predictive capabilities in AI and deep learning. And I think when, you're walking down the street, talk to your neighbor, AI, well, everyone thinks it's they vacuum up everything and they write papers for you in high school, but this AI and using it for natural language process, NLP, that could be a good application that maybe people aren't really, it doesn't dazzle people, it just works, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt had mentioned that is parsing out like reports and blogs. That's something that we are doing a lot of testing on, and we found that to be very useful. Is they can ingest a lot of this information that comes out, blog posts, news stories, and then it'll start finding those related malware. So you can say, oh, new malware is coming in. In fact, I was working on this yesterday for a demonstration I have later today. Is it brings in this report, it parses out this information. All right, now I can take a look at this malware. What is this malware doing? Does it have attack techniques that it's associated with that they can start looking at to check for identification, for mitigation steps? So it's very handy, and it makes it a lot easier. Instead of analysts having to parse out and go through, they can quickly see, oh, this report's brought in, it's related to this malware, this threat actor, it's been associated with these attack patterns. So it makes it a lot easier for them to kind of quick link and take, a look at pieces of information to see if it's relevant to their organization or not. And if it is, they can take action. If it isn't, they can mark it as such and then move on.
No, Matt, everyone has limited resources. My home here, I have limited resources, and agencies have limited resources. My wife is interested in doing a project around the house, and I have a budget for that, and it's probably less than what she wants. So there's a push and pull here. And what I have to do is I have to maximize what limited resources I have. Some of the work I'll do myself, some I'll hire out to an electrician. And at what point in time do you take advantage of those limited resources? And that may be where ThreatQuotient fits in, is taking a look at the different tools they have and trying to leverage the max they can out of each one instead of buying another tool. I think it seems to me that might be where you'd fit into to maybe optimizing or taking what limited resources you have and using them effectively.
That is, I mean, that's a great use case. The other piece we haven't touched on is our automation process. And that allows, like, cyber threat intelligence. There are very few of them, and a lot of them are ex-Air Force, ex-military, some sort. And to automate things that they would have to do manually, we do that within our platform as well. So if you always got data from this source and you always went and did this with that source, we can automate that process, and then you send it to your SIM or whatever tools you're using. So you automate some of the work, and that allows them to get to the work they want to do, which is the interesting work, not going through clicking 10 buttons every time they see a certain set of data, allowing me to automate the process using, and Ross just brought up a good point. We automate that processing of pulling those reports and pulling out what's important, so someone doesn't have to go through this report and look at it.
Ross, I'm not going to ask you to predict the Super Bowl, but I am going to ask you to look into the future. I am kind of pessimistic. I think there's going to be an incident and people are going to get serious. So looking in the next 3 or 4 years, Ross, where do you see this whole general idea of cybersecurity in the federal government? It seems there's some lax attitudes in maybe some civilian agencies that may not be there in the military. So you think what do you think is going to happen, Ross? And as far as cybersecurity, this gets crazy in, say, 3 years from next 3 years.
Yeah. One of the things I've been, hearing over the last several years is a push for sharing data. There may be an incident where that happens, and the sharing of data becomes much more serious, and they're going to need to start sharing data with each other much more efficiently, much faster. I know there's been some programs that have started doing that, but I think there's going to be much more of a push to start getting that data shared and getting it to the tools that they need in an automated fashion. I think that's just going to have to be done at a much faster rate than it currently is.
It is, because too many tools. Matt, what do you think?
I'd agree with that. So it's sharing, it's automation, it's predictive, and predictive is important. So, I saw this attack from this adversary. Well, I certainly ought to be looking for every other attack that adversary is known to use, versus waiting for it to be in my network. Because everything's driven. You hear about, like, the huge MGM crisis, things like that. The government works on IT, and these tools are getting better, but the attackers are getting better, and they're certainly using AI and all the other tools to help write whatever attacks they're using. So it's an ongoing battle, and you have to take it seriously, or your agency will end up in the newspaper, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's not a good sign. We're recording this on Zoom. I'm looking at you two gentlemen here, and one guy's got a master's degree in electrical engineering. Another one's an ex-Marine with a lot of experience. Well, these guys seems like two guys I want to have on my team for the Super Bowl coming up, or the Super Bowl actually is protecting data from the federal government, and I think this would be a good combination to help your company. Unfortunately, gentlemen, we're running out of time here. You've been listening to the FelTech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guests today, Matt McCormick, Senior Vice President, Business and Corporate Development, and Ross Hammer, Principal Threat Intelligence Engineer from ThreatQuotient.